All right, welcome to episode 76 of the At Bat Podcast presented by Warren Media, where we give you our thoughts on the latest Chicago baseball news as well as take a trip around the league. This is the thing, I guess we'll call it Thanksgiving special since we're in the middle of the Thanksgiving week, recording this on Tuesday. But how we doing? I'm Saul Rodriguez, along with my co-host Miles Porter, as well as Gabe Wilkins, who of course you can hear on his own podcast, The State of Gabe, available on Spotify. How we doing, Miles? How we doing today, man?
Hey, doing good. Staying warm, trying to stay dry. Got some new mats for my car, as I know that the winter is rolling in. So I don't want. I'm such a clean freak when it comes to my car. I'm like, nah.
WeatherTech, you got the
I'll
WeatherTech?
vacuum it every other week. Like I will. Yeah, I'll take care of it. I'll vacuum it every other week. All the leaves, all the dirt. I'm like, nah. So I got the
I
mats.
feel you.
Hey, I respect you. You gotta keep it clean. It's like I've gotten
Yeah,
like I've gotten in people's cars sometimes, and it's like there's bottles and cans from like 2 weeks ago in there. I'm like, come on, bro. Like it's like your second house. You know what are you doing? How you doing, Gabe? How's everything
yeah,
going, man?
exactly.
I'm doing well, man. I can't complain, man. It's always a blessing to be in the building talking baseball and everything that's going on the diamond. So I'm looking forward to getting to it.
Yeah, and like I was saying before we got started, is plenty of Chicago stuff happened. Especially like I want to call it. You know what? I'll call it regardless if somebody calls it. Corrects me on this, but I'll call it a mini blockbuster that the White Sox made. For Mike Soroka, because I mean that's honestly I really like that deal, and we're gonna get to that. The Cubs, of course. I want to get your opinion, Gabe, as you weren't here last week, so I want to talk to you about the Shohei stuff and just like the little rumors with the Cubs. Obviously, the Cubs signed, a reliever from Japan. There's, interest with Woodruff, Burns, and all that. So we'll get into that. They also had a promotion today with Jared Banner. Also, the White Sox had they signed Paul DeYoung reportedly. So we'll talk that as well. Dylan Cease, there's rumor the Dodgers are interested, so we'll definitely talk about that. And then around the league, we'll definitely lead off with the MVP award because that's one thing that I've been wanting to talk about for a while with Ronald Acuna Jr. winning and Shohei Ohtani winning. And there's also been plenty of other signings that we'll see if we can get around to. But first, we'll start on the South side. And then the White Sox, of course, like I said, had a mini blockbuster with getting Mike Soroka to the South side I believe it was a 5-player package from the White Sox, right? It was from the White Sox to the White Sox. It was Mike Soroka leading the way, and they got a lefty in Jared Schuster. Then Illinois native Nicky Lopez, Braden Shoemake, and minor leaguer Riley Goins. So honestly, my thoughts at the beginning, was I was really surprised. My thoughts right away, honestly, like just seeing the package and how late it was. Also, it was like I think it hit like at midnight or something or around midnight. So it was a strange time to break it, but yeah, I mean, I personally, from an outsider looking in, Gabe, and obviously I'm interested to hear what you think, but that I really like that deal just because Mike Soroka, we've seen him have Cy Young caliber stuff in his career. Obviously, injuries kind of like sideline him for a little bit, but I mean, I think the age is still on his side, and like again, the White Sox get a few players that you never know. It's a low risk, high reward type of stuff. I mean, you got a guy like Nicky Lopez who got speed, who could play defense. Like the other guys, I'm not 100% familiar on, but I'm sure you've looked into it already and know about them. But off the bat, what did you think about this? And just the other players as well, like whatever you know from those guys like Jared Schuster, which I know some White Sox fans were also excited about. So, what did you think about the trade overall?
Anytime you can get 5 players for a reliever who had an ERA slightly over 6, granted his middle infield defense wasn't the best behind him, but anytime you could get 5 players for a guy that had that type of ERA, even if Aaron Bummer was to turn into like, let's say Billy Wagner for the Atlanta Braves, you would take that, especially when you're getting positions of need filled, such as you got a starting pitcher in Jared Schuster who has some elite stuff, but has some issues with command. You could get him in the lab with Brian Bannister, work on that. Braden Shoemake is a guy that was once upon a time a former first-round draft pick of the Braves organization, made it to the big league club, but didn't have success with the bat. Will have an opportunity to fight for a job more than likely on this roster. You never know, even though the White Sox signed Paul DeYoung, we're getting that in a bit. Like he could easily be the shortstop if he plays well in spring training. And then to get Mike Soroka, Michael Soroka. I don't want to butcher his name. I know he prefers to be called
Oh,
Michael.
Michael, yeah.
Michael Soroka. That's a plus. And what I think they did was they took a gamble on 5 guys that the Braves were gonna get rid of anyway. And they say, hey, let's play the lottery. We can cash in on a couple. If we cash in on a couple, great. If we don't, oh well. But Aaron Bummer, his time had ran its course here. And if you're Chris Getz, you get Nicky Lopez, a guy that, while I'm not gonna lie, I'm not personally high on him. I do know he has a solid glove. And that was something that Chris Getz said that he was going to address in the GM meetings when he talked to the media. He talked about how he wanted to get a middle infielder, if not several middle infielders, that could provide him with solid defensive value. Nicky Lopez does that. And guys that have positional flexibility. Nicky Lopez does that. He could play short, he could play second, he could play third. Brendan Shoemaker's a guy that could play short or second base. And I think it's good for those guys getting out of Atlanta, coming to a situation like this where it's little to no pressure. Because in Atlanta, that's a team that just won over 100 games. You screw up anything over there, bad ABs, you give up walks that lead to multiple runs, that leads to you getting replaced. And it's a lot of pressure to perform there. Whereas here, these guys know what they're going to be asked to do. And at the same time, they could develop along the way. So it's not a bad move. It's not the best move, but it's not a bad move to get for Aaron Bummer.
Yeah, and that's yeah, I totally forgot. I just left one of the main pieces out of that one, and Aaron Bummer going over there. But yeah, I mean that's a guy that I mean, obviously he didn't have a great season, but I mean you obviously have seen him at his best and like what he can do. So again, it's you're buying on hopefully getting the best out of a Bummer, the best out of a Soroka. So that's kind of what the deal is like, and what I like about it, kind of because it's like there's just plenty of possibility with also not too much risk in there. So it's like it's definitely a fascinating trade. But Miles, what's your opinion on the trade? I mean, this is a deal that of course, as Gabe was talking about with Michael Soroka, he has a change of scenery. So I think it's going to be good for him on there. And I think I saw an article too talking about how he's giddy after the deal. I think he's excited to see what he could do because, being on the South Side, you got plenty of opportunity now. And even a guy like Nicky Lopez, as you said, Gabe, you're not too high on him, but I think he's a good placeholder. And we'll talk about a little bit about he won't need to play shortstop anymore, of course, with DeYoung probably being there now for until Colson gets up there. So Miles, what were your thoughts on the trade, man?
I like it. I like how the Sox are really getting to it right now in the offseason. Yeah, I really like Michael Soroka's stuff. And going forward, I think Gabe made a good point where I think Bomber's time on the South Side has definitely ran its course, and so it's cool. It's cool kind of seeing the White Sox already start to regroup going in the next year, and addressing certain aspects of the pitching, stuff that we've talked about this entire year to this point. So I like it. I'm hoping that there's maybe a few more moves that they can make, and I'm looking forward to how they're going to see what are they going to do with Nicky Lopez. How is that going to play with Paul DeYoung? I don't see those as long-term options, obviously, but I think it's cool just in terms of bringing in some veteran leadership in Paul DeYoung.
Oh yeah, and we'll talk about that. One thing before we move on from the Soroka trade, I did want to say with Nicky Lopez too, also being an Illinois native. Funny story. I don't know if I mentioned this before, but I actually when I went because he's I believe he's the same age, my same age as I think he's like 29, something like that, maybe 28 around there. But he went to Naperville Central, and I called play-by-play for Glenbard East when I went there, and I actually called a Nicky Lopez game winner, and which I think is hilarious because he was I thought he was better at basketball than he was at baseball actually. But yeah, I guess he decided like when I heard that he was going to be in the draft, and then he got drafted, I was like, damn, I guess he was better at baseball than basketball. But that dude could shoot. Like he was like an elite 3-point shooter. Naperville Central was really good at the time. I think I might have been like our junior year in like 2012 or something like that. But I think it's hilarious. It's one of those things where I'm like, I really hope one day I run into him so I could like tell him that because I'm like, come a long way from the DVC, the DVC conference. So hopefully he does work for the Sox for you, for not only because for you, Gabe, but also just because he's Illinois native. It's always cool to see that. But from one Illinois native to another, Paul DeYoung. is reportedly signed with the White Sox, and is another move again. It's you're buying low, and you never know with this type of guy who's got power, who's shown hot streaks. He had a hot streak with the Giants when he signed over there. He's had plenty of great moments with the Cardinals. But Gabe, what do you think about this signing? Obviously, like I said, anybody that's playing shortstop is going to be a placeholder for Colson Montgomery, the AFL Stars MVP. So, what did you think about this, man?
When I look at that move, he's a bridge gap guy, just to put it bluntly.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, he could provide you with some pop here and there, but you just want him to do what he's known for, and that's provide you with solid defense up the middle. He could play a little second base, but his primary position will be short. However, everybody out here is saying that they think the new middle infield star next year is going to be Nicky Lopez and Paul DeJong. I think what Chris Getz is doing is stacking depth right now. That was something that this ball club lacked a great deal. He's seeking to stack depth and stack depth with players that can provide him with positional versatility. And that's what Paul DeJong will bring, and that's what Nicky Lopez will bring. But in the case of Paul DeJong, you're getting a guy who, if he can hit at least 235 or better, and he gives you anywhere between 12 to 15 home runs, you will take it. But in my opinion, I think Chris Getz is trying to create an open competition battle. And I think he's going to bring in 7 players to do that. We talked about these moves, but no one's even thinking about the Dylan Cease reports in regards to what they're going to get back. And we don't know what pieces they're going to get back. But I would hope and I would assume that in that deal, Chris Getz is looking for not only a starting arm, but maybe to add another infielder as well as an outfielder, preferably a right fielder that he could see being a long-term solution on 35th and Shields for the next several years and counting.
Yeah, oh yeah, 100%. We'll definitely get to that because I did want to ask you about that as well. But yeah, and also another thing I was thinking about while you were talking is the fact that Paul DeJong, also just another veteran, and also just the fact that Colson's going to come up. I think next year. I think it's what I see that's going to happen. But a guy like Paul DeJong also is good veteranship. Not he's been in the league for a while, so he can also, get, Colson under his wing and kind of teach him the ways as well. I mean, Nicky Lopez has been in the league for a few years as well, so he's another guy that, obviously played a Gold Glove caliber defense. So, it's one of those things where it's like you get, from all sides of the ball, and I think that helps out a lot. And I think that's one of those things that he's trying to do as well. Which again, and you mentioned Chris Getz. Got to give credit where credit is due, regardless of these deals, because obviously you're always going to get people talking about like, what is this deal? What is that? What is he doing here? Like Paul DeJong, really? Like it's always like that. But at the same time, I have to say, regardless of the caliber of player, the effort is obviously there with Chris Getz. Like he's obviously trying to do something ASAP, and the amount of deals he's making, I don't care what type of caliber player. If my GM's out there at least trying to make moves and doing that, I think it says a lot, honestly. So I personally like that.
It says a lot. It says a lot. Don't get me wrong, but like at some point you got to address right field. You got to address right field, and you got to bring in somebody on a big money deal that you see being a part of this ball club, not only in the year 2024, but down the next several years. Because if you're going to trade Dylan Cease, that leaves you looking for 2 to 3 starting pitchers. I know Soroka's going to be in your rotation, and I know Schuster's going to be in your rotation, but you're going to have a relatively young rotation. You got to get a top of the line ace if you're getting rid of Dylan Cease on this free agency market. Me personally, I would love Eduardo Rodriguez, but that remains to be seen.
Oh, and you know what? Gabe, you have all the right to feel that way, because I mean, as a White Sox fan, I mean, you expect a lot, and I definitely understand that point for sure. So, yeah, I don't blame you. But Miles, what are your thoughts on the Paul DeJong move, as well as to like kind of the White Sox adding guys for depth as well? Because I mean, it's pretty important, regardless of if you're bringing up a young guy or whatever, even if you're looking to compete next year or whatever. Because obviously, it's what they said, of course, that they wanted to compete next year. Whether you believe it or not is up to you. But what do you think about that deal in general?
I think it's good. I think it's good to bring someone like Paul DeJong, who has experienced a lot of winning and has played with a lot of winning players and under great managers as well. And the White Sox are in an interesting position where if they do this correctly in the offseason, they might be able to put themselves in a position to compete next year. It's one of those things, especially when you look at that division, you just cannot count this team out. So, I think the more veteran leadership you add is great. Obviously, there's some great prospects on the rise coming up as well. So I would love to kind of see the White Sox go for it. And you bring in someone like Eduardo Rodriguez. Why not compete next year? As much as I think we've been disappointed with this ball club, I'm still standing kind of firm on the fact where I think they have pieces that they can work with, and they don't have to completely shut this entire thing down. Not right now, at least. I still feel like if we add the correct pieces to a ball club like this, such as a Paul DeYoung, such as an Eduardo Rodriguez, I could see them kind of giving other teams in their division a run for the money.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing too is like there's plenty of options out there, and a guy like Eduardo Rodriguez, I feel like is doable in that sense. So I mean, I definitely like that for sure, Gabe. But you mentioned it, Gabe, with Dylan Cease and the rumors that are going on, and of course, the main team that has been talked about is the Dodgers. And I mean, you mentioned it. That's one of the suitors you wanted, but I know for sure. I think you told me that the main suitor or the suitor you prefer is the Orioles, but we have yet to hear about that. But regardless of that, I've talked to a few White Sox fans up until now too as well, and the same name I keep hearing over and over is James Outman that people want from the Dodgers. I think another one that's not being talked about enough, and again, if you don't want him, tell me why. But I think also Gavin Lux would be an option as well. I think he's a guy, second baseman. He could probably play third as well. I mean, plenty of potential there. So maybe the Dodgers don't want to. I mean, I feel like they've kind of thrown their chips in there with with he's gotten injured and kind of he's shown faith to the team and all that. So who knows what the relationship is. But that's one of the guys I think that would be cool. But again, plenty of options when it comes to prospects and plenty of guys to give up. So it's also interesting. But what are your thoughts about these rumors that are coming up with Dylan Cease to the Dodgers?
Not surprised.
Mm-hmm.
Dodgers have one of the best farm systems in the game. Dodgers have several pitchers who, let's face it, are close to cracking the majors, but most of them are not going to be wearing Dodger blue anytime soon. They're going to be wearing another team's uniform. So if you can nab a starting arm and you can get a solid top-notch outfield prospect out of that organization on top of a guy that has major league experience, you'll take it. But as I've said before, and I say it again, the Dodgers may be a team that they're talking to, but you can rest assured they're talking over the Baltimore Orioles too. I refuse to believe that they're not. And that's why I look at some White Sox fans that are overblowing the Paul DeYoung and the Nicky Lopez moves that, and we know they acquired Lopez via the Bummer trade from Atlanta. Mm-hmm. They look at that and they say, well, oh, that's our starting infield. Baltimore has an infielder by the name of Joey Ortiz that can play shortstop, second base, or third base. He is blocked in the Orioles organization by Jordan Westberg and Jackson Holliday, who we know is coming. And with him being blocked and not having a home, and another infielder who he plays beside at the AAA level, Connor Norby, who plays second and can play a little bit of outfield, not having a home, those are guys that you target. And if maybe you could get the Orioles to put in a Colton Cowser or a Heston Kjerstad on top of that deal with a Chase McDermott as an arm, you cooking. So like Baltimore at some point, they got to stop hugging the prospects because they're not going to spend the money. Mm-hmm. The Angelos family has made that clear. Mike Elias was willing to put the prospects up when he had to get Justin Verlander out of Detroit working in the Astros front office in 2017 when they won the series. So the way I see it, Baltimore is a top organization. St. Louis is an organization they can seek to do business with, but evidently based on the moves they made, they're looking like a team that's willing to take a few gambles on starting pitching as opposed to making a big home run signing. But yeah, the Dodgers, I don't mind those rumors, but I don't know if they're gonna have enough, man. But if they want to, I think it should cost James Outman. Mm-hmm. Because we talking about a pitcher that rarely missed a start the last 2 years, relatively healthy. Like, you got to pay for that. This dude don't miss starts, and then, oh yeah, by the way, he was runner up in the Cy Young a year ago. So remains to be seen, but I'm not shocked by that rumor.
Yeah, and I think also with the Orioles thing, which I mean, you're 100% right. I mean, if you want to get some players, you're gonna want to get it from the Orioles. I mean, they have plenty. But I think with the Orioles, if they're not down for a deal like that, it's probably because they're preparing for the future of not re-signing these guys, and they're probably like, well, we're not going to re-sign these guys, so we might as well just keep everybody because it's going to be like a chain moving the chains, which I don't agree with. Which I don't agree with, by the way. I don't
At
agree
some
with.
point, you gonna pay for that.
I know
You gotta get rid of some of them prospects to win. And then your fan base knows you. They knew you weren't getting Aaron Nola. They know you're not.
every single year, and they're willing to spend money, and they're willing to get rid of guys. They're willing to get rid of guys, or for whoever the case may be, to compete. So I can see that for sure, and I could also see Gavin Lux coming to Chicago and fitting in very well. This is also someone who grew up in Wisconsin. I'm always playing at his home field that he grew up at, and so there's definitely kind of like a give and take there for sure that I could see kind of fitting for both sides. And the Dodgers are clearly going to be very aggressive in whatever and whoever's available, whatever they can get in terms of pitching going forward. So I think it's realistic. I think it makes sense.
Yeah, with Alman, I mean, we saw how good he was. I mean, he had a go-ahead grand slam against the Cubs in the ninth inning. I mean, that dude can do a lot of things, and he's very versatile. And came out of nowhere, at least for people outside of LA. So I think that's pretty cool, and definitely I feel like would fit very well with the White Sox because that dude is just like the type of dude that has a lunch pail out and he goes to play every day and it's like grinding out and he looks like a good ball player. But I mean, these rumors are going to be soaring for a while, and of course the GM meetings in a few weeks. I think it's going to be interesting to see what Chris gets done there. So we'll be following that all the way there. On the north side of Chicago, I mean, when we're talking about trades and stuff like that, that's also something that has been circling around with the Cubs. But before we get into other certain things when it comes to trading, Gabe, want to get your opinion on just the Shohei Ohtani rumors, not necessarily pertaining to the Cubs. It could be to see what your thoughts on the chances there. But what have you thought about the Ohtani sweepstakes so far? Because we've seen, there's a billboard by O'Hare with the AL MVP, Ohtani. People think, oh, maybe he already visited or he's doing his visits right now. But of course, we heard that if we hear anything about that from a certain team, they will be disqualified from the Ohtani sweepstakes. What are your thoughts so far on what we've heard about Ohtani in the last few weeks?
I look at the rumors that I'm hearing. It's interesting that it seems like the top two teams are going to be in the National League.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if there's a mystery team out there. I would hope that there is, because for a star of his magnitude, I know he's going to have a high asking price, but as far as like the Ohtani to the Cub rumors, I'm going to just keep it Chicago specific for this. If you're getting him, you better make damn sure you're willing to put up the bread for any and everybody, especially if you're getting them on a long-term contract, because there should be an expectation from the fan base and the people in this town, if he does indeed decide to come here, that you're going to be seeking to contend for the next several years. Now, I've heard you, Saul, and Miles talk about how that's the only thing you all have wanted to hear from the Ricketts family, that, hey, we're going to be committed to going all in and spending a win in an effort to bring another championship to Chicago. That's been $1 million question. I think you finally going to get a chance to see whether or not that question gets answered. But as far as the rumors, I'm not surprised that the Dodgers or Cubs are in it. I'm disappointed personally that the Seattle Mariners are not in it, especially knowing the Japanese connections that they have had over the course of their franchise history, with Nintendo owning them and Ichiro being a big presence there. To not get in on that when you have a team that's on the cusp of cracking through the door and becoming a major player in the AL West, and you got Julio Rodriguez out there, that just makes me upset, because that fan base has it, and that market could use a guy like him.
Yeah, man, that's very disappointing. I completely agree, because it's one of those things where it's one of those spots that if he wouldn't come to the Cubs, and like I've said this multiple times, like if if I had to answer where I think he's going to go, I think it's going to end up being the Dodgers, because they're willing to do whatever it takes there too. And the Cubs, I hope they're willing to do it. And I mean, there's no doubt that you should be willing to go all in money wise, just because he pays for himself. Like it's self-explanatory. So like there's no excuse there. I think it just ultimately comes down to where he wants to go. And I think everyone keeps saying the West Coast or where he wants to go. And I get it. I understand why. So that's why I think, but that's why I think Seattle would have been a great spot. I think the mystery team could be a team like the Rangers too, because they're interested in continuing to win. And like people say, and people keep saying, oh, like if, and I don't really blame them, but I keep hearing like, hey, like if you really want to win, look at the Rangers. They won already. So like they know how to win. I understand that. But I think realistically, if I'm him, I'm like, I feel like the Dodgers are the best spot. I mean, it's as blockbuster as it gets on the West Coast. It's obviously we all know the Dodgers, but we'll see what happens there. But yeah, I am. It does suck that that Mariners aren't going to go all in, just because we've seen with Ichiro, we've seen how much we've even seen like just the connection that Otani has with Seattle, like just like the whole, like every time like he goes to Seattle and Ichiro's there and all that stuff, and it's just cool to see. But with a small market team, it's unfortunate that it's not going to work out. But and other things with the Cubs, they did sign, like I said, they signed a left-hander out of Japan, Edwin Escobar, which he's a former Diamondback. He spent 6 seasons in the NPB, and he had it's like I think it was like a 3.37 ERA. So he had success in Japan. He's 31. Miles, let me hear from you, man, on this one. Like, what do you think about this signing? I mean, we've talked about it. All three of us have talked about it because of the fact that the Cubs needed left-handers out of the pen last year, and just like never worked out. I mean, they non-tendered Brandon Hughes, so that's over with. The Cubs also non-tendered Cody Hoyer, so that's over with, even though he's a right-hander, but there's a reliever. So what are your thoughts on this signing? Because as much as I'm sure a lot of Cubs fans don't know a lot about this guy, it is still nice to get a guy that I'm sure worked on his stuff in Japan, which is a plus, I'm sure. And also just being a left-hander out of the pen, which of course the Cubs have needed. And I mean, even Cubs fans have even said, hey, let's go out and get Josh Hader, which I don't think is going to happen. But it's just one of those guys. It's an option, of course. What did you think about this signing with Edwin Escobar?
I just want to say before I start my take, I'm still salty towards Josh Hader for what he did to us in 2018 and the way he struck out Daniel. I've never seen a dismantling like that in my life. It scarred me as a baseball player. I never want to see him at Wrigley again.
I don't blame you.
But I like it. I like this pickup. This is a good signing, and I really like the the stories of the guys who come from Japan, because they really do get a chance to kind of work on their stuff and perfect whatever it is they have. So it's great. We're getting some different looks now, especially from the left side, something that we've been asking for as Cubs fans. Not too much to say about it. I think that he had some rough years prior to going to Japan, but I have faith in this front office. I have faith in the Cubs continuing to work with him and just getting another lefty within that bullpen, I think is really important for us going forward. The more right-handers you see, the more predictable our bullpen is going to be. And so kind of just giving different looks from both sides is going to be helpful. It's going to be really beneficial for the Cubs going forward because the bullpen was one of our downfalls in the later part of this previous season. So I'm all for it.
Yeah, and you're right in the sense because I mean he did have in two major league seasons he had a 4.77 ERA or sorry I remember I misread the number 7.01 ERA in 2 seasons. Granted, it was 27 games, but short sample size. But he went on to go on to the NPB. The native from Venezuela, and I mean in the NPB, I'm looking at his numbers right now. The NPB, let's see. Yeah, he had a 3.17 ERA in 7 seasons. So obviously he had put up some good numbers there. So that's a good thing to see. But yeah, Gabe, what are your thoughts on a move like this? Like just getting anybody, from another country, like, because the styles are different. And obviously in Japan, I feel like guys coming over, like, Miles Mikolas is like that. Merrill Kelly was just in the World Series. Like guys like that, they work on their stuff over there and they have different techniques, and it almost helps these guys to kind of find another gear. What do you think about a signing like this and what it could do? Because it's kind of, again, it's probably they haven't released the numbers or anything like that, but I'm assuming it's a smaller like amount of money, nothing, so you're buying low, but it's obviously a high reward possibility.
I don't mind the Cubs taking a move like this. Anytime you could get a left-handed reliever, they don't grow on trees. You would take it, a reliever that's appeared to improve upon his stuff overseas in Japan pitching. And like you said, you brought up some great examples. Like Merrill Kelly was pitching in Korea just a couple years ago, and he won a game in the World Series and has really found a way to resurrect his career in his mid-30s in Arizona. And Edwin Escobar being a reliever out the pen, that could be something that's vital. And if he's able to earn a spot on a big league roster out of spring training, you take it. I mean, they're taking a flyer on a guy, but it's not a guy that's like a bum by any stretch. Like this was a guy that was a top 100 prospect in the Red Sox farm system. He couldn't quite break out over there, headed to Japan, made some money, and has become a very great reliever. Like I have his numbers over the last 4 seasons in Japan. He's posted an ERA of 2.17, 326, 242, 333. So he's striking out like close to anywhere between a batter an inning, limiting walks and home runs. And they say he has a fastball that's like up to around 95, 96. Like when it's nothing wrong when you taking a gamble on a reliever that's had success overseas, has a plus fastball, and seeing whether or not he could translate once again at the major league level with his second go round.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what I like to see, guys striking out, getting strikeouts like that out of the pen. I mean, it's very important, and especially from the left-hand side. Plenty of guys out there that you could have gotten. I think that I like that one because that's outside of the box, and it's also going into the season. If he, as you said, he coming out makes the roster and everything. Like, it's a guy a lot of people aren't familiar with. So again, it kind of gives you the advantage at first, and we'll see how it goes. But on another side of things with the Cubs, Brandon Woodruff again non-tendered by the Brewers. Corbin Burns is available apparently. The Cubs apparently are interested in both of those guys, which I think is hilarious because, like, I mean, you already got I already got Craig Counsell. I don't think the Brewers would give us Corbin Burns. So that's something. But Brandon Woodruff is a possibility as he's out there as a free agent. But Miles, what do you think about these two guys and your interest in either of them? To be honest, those obviously we've seen those guys be all-star caliber pitchers. Brandon Woodruff gets bitten by the injury bug in general. Something came up as well in the last week or so, which I don't know where it came from, but I've seen a couple Cubs pundits talk about it, is the possibility of I think I kind of know where it came from. The fact that the Blue Jays are open to seeing if hearing deals for a guy like maybe Bo Bichette, for example. And I've seen Cub fans talk about Bo Bichette coming to Chicago, and I'm like, I'm all in. Whatever it takes, get this man at third base for the Cubs. I'm like, I don't care. And but like I won't get too excited on that. That's just like came out of the fucking blue, and I'm like, I don't think it's gonna happen. But Because it's one of those things I see and I'm like, no way. You know what I mean? Like, come on. Like that's a little
That
bit
ain't
yeah, it's a little outrageous. But I do see where the Blue Jays are going because I don't see them like making an effort to get a starting pitcher. I don't see them every year. They just don't really do much for me. Like Kevin Gausman as your ace, no disrespect. Like I don't that in the playoffs, obviously it hasn't worked out. So they're, in my opinion, I don't really see them going. And it kind of looks like they're also fading from like extending guy like Vladdy Guerrero Jr. They're just kind of fading from that end. So I do see them kind of moving guys. And I will say also before I give it to you, Miles, is that Bo Bichette fits more in a Dodger uniform, in my opinion, than anywhere else. I just, for some reason, I just kind of, maybe it's the blue. I don't know. But Miles, what do you think overall in these scenarios with the Cubs? Interest in Woodruff, Burns, and this crazy Bichette talk.
Hey man, Brewers fans are gonna hate us, bro. Matter of
Yeah.
fact, let's throw Christy Yelich in there too. Let's get Christy Yelich over here as well. You know what? I like William Contreras. Get him over here too. You know what? I like that too. It's already Wrigley North. You might as well just bring it all over. No,
Oh man.
I mean, I like it. I like the depth, bro. I like the idea of it. I think that even with our starting pitching, we can still be even a little bit more solid. And obviously, we don't have Stroman anymore. It'd be cool. It'd be cool to have another solid arm in that rotation. And obviously, I'm leaning more towards Corbin Burns in the sense. I think it's unfortunate that Woodruff goes through the injuries that he does. I still think that he's an immaculate pitcher. But right now, with in the state of the Cubs right now, this is a ball club that's trying to win right now and trying to win for years to come. I would definitely prefer Corbin Burns coming in and almost acting as maybe a number 2 or maybe a number 1. I could see him definitely more as like a 2 or 3, because I still have faith in Justice Steele to kind of lead this rotation for at least another 2-3 years. Obviously, anything can happen with that, but I think Corbin Burns would be great. I think he'd be a great pickup for this ball club, and adding more of a solid presence to that rotation would be huge.
Yeah, I agree, and I think with a guy like Burns, like I said, Cy Young caliber pitcher. Woodruff has also showed Cy Young caliber stuff, but just like I said, the injuries have kind of caused him. But Gabe, what are your thoughts on just the whole chatter in general of all 3 of these guys? Like I mentioned with Bichette too, as well. Just like, is it one of those things where it's just talk? Is that all it is, or is it one of those things where what do you make of it?
To me, it's all smoke.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I say that is because if you the Milwaukee Brewers and Craig Counsell just walked over to Clark and Addison and decided to take the Cubs job, why would you entertain the thought of trading Corbin Burns winning your own division?
Mm-hmm.
Unless if the Cubs are going to be willing to give up a Pete Crow Armstrong, a Kay Horton, Kevin Alcantara, and you gotta get a haul back for Corbin Burns. And that's in spite of and that's gonna be a hard thing for Milwaukee to do when you consider the fact that Corbin Burns is entering the last year of his deal.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna be one of the hottest free agents on the market a year from now in November of 2024. So I can't see that one. Brandon Woodruff, yeah, you can sign him, but then you're signing him really to rehab mostly because he's not going to be ready to go into the latter part of 2024. And that's not even a guarantee. He's more than likely going to miss the whole season. So if you're signing him, how long are you signing him? And are you sure that you might be able to get anything of good value in that return for Brandon Woodruff? Or in the case, like if you sign him off the market, because his injury history, as we know, his track record, his health record, that's something you got to watch out for. As far as Bo Bichette, I don't think Toronto is willing to tear it down completely just yet. Because if you hearing reports about Bo Bichette, then things should really be heating up for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Even though he's coming off of a down season, like that guy still has a lot of tremendous talent and promise to where he could carry a ball club and you could get a haul back for him. I don't think they want to go down that route yet. I know they're going to let Whit Merrifield walk elsewhere, but they do need to upgrade their bullpen. They do need to upgrade their starting pitching. It's been said that they're seeking to shop Alek Manoah. For who and what remains to be seen, but I just can't see those 3 guys. Bo Bichette on the Dodgers, though, that would be real scary. That would be real scary. And if you could get Ohtani and they've been linked to Mike Trout with, man, you got an all-star team over there, man. Like I don't know how much richer the Dodgers could continue to get. I just don't.
Yeah, when I saw that tweet where it was like they were saying that they're interested in getting Otani and also trading for Mike Mike Trout, I mean that's just like that's a cheat code. Like that's not even fair. Like, and they could do that. And I'm sure that Trout wouldn't mind it because again, you're just moving like some miles away, and not compared to another state. So,
Yep.
and the Brandon Woodruff thing, I do see the Cubs kind of making that deal just because of the sense of like they've done that before with like Drew Smiley, like he didn't pitch a year and they signed him for like 3 years or 2 years, whatever it was. I'm not saying it was worth it, or I'm not saying you should do it. I definitely, when I think also if you were to do it, uh, you're it's kind of a weird thing to do in when you're trying to win in 2024, I guess, if you want to make
Exactly.
an argument, because
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's I mean, that would be one way I guess it would be taken. So I definitely see what you're talking about, but I wouldn't rule it out for the Cubs just because, like I said, they've done it with a guy like Drew. So, but yeah, and I think Blue Jays would be in the wrong to trade Bichette. I just think that if they would like, it's one of those things where he is the one that would bring back the most. And I think that's probably why they're even considering. It's also probably just a feeler. Like if that's a thing that they just threw out there, they're probably just trying to see what the market would be. I mean, like a guy like Bichette kind of is like, is going to get a major haul and whatever it is. And I think that even if it's not this year, maybe they'll probably bring it back up like next year and stuff like that. But it's definitely something to think about because I'm like,
And
man, I
then
mean, it's
doesn't
crazy.
Bichette's
25.
contract, not to cut, I'm sorry
Oh, you're
if I
good. You're
cut
good.
you off, Saul, but
No, you're
like,
good.
isn't Bichette's contract? I think he's a free agent after the 25 season. So
Yeah,
like,
he's
even if
yeah.
you trade for him,
Yeah.
you're only gonna have him for like a couple of years. So you want to make it a priority to figure out if you can lock him up to a long-term contract. So I can't see the Cubs wanting to trade away a bunch of prospects to get a guy that they haven't had locked up just yet. Yeah, he's a free agent in 2026.
Mm-hmm.
So like
Mm-hmm.
25 is the last year's deal.
Yeah.
Like you want to get him locked up immediately because we talking about a guy that's 25 years old getting
Yep.
traded, and you moving him to play third, and he would be one of your top players off the bat if you were able to acquire him.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's one of those guys. It's kind of like with the Pete Alonso thing that's kind of faded. I feel like who knows if it's still going on, but um, yeah, like if you're gonna get him, you're gonna try to extend him. Say with Soto, you're trying to. I feel like it would be a waste of a trade if you don't, right? Because Padres want a haul, um, you know, and plenty of people said that the Cubs have what they want, but the Cubs aren't willing. Which I mean, understandably so. It is what it is. Even though I think we've seen that the Cubs are willing to give up a guy like Morel because it looks like that's what the Mets want, but it isn't. They want Morel, but not as a centerpiece. Apparently, is what I've heard. But yeah, it's the Cubs definitely have wiggle room, and I think I do like though that the fact that the Cubs are being aggressive in the sense of uh being willing to trade some of those coveted minor leaguers because at the end of the day, as we all know, as good as they are, we don't know what they're going to bring in to the major leagues, and I think
Mm-hmm.
I do like the aggressiveness there because you just have to, and I think we've seen it plenty of times at the Cubs. When Epstein was there, we traded Glaber for Chapman. Obviously, they got a World Series out of it, but we've seen Glaber be a great baseball player, and so far with the Yankees, he's been great. So yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where I do like the aggressiveness. So we'll see where that goes, and I mean, we'll see how aggressive they'll be in the free agent. I think that if they do get a big free agent, it would be like an Otani or if they are interested in, say, even if they are interested in Eduardo Rodriguez, who knows, something like that, a starter as well, or even Yoshinobu Yamamoto, who obviously along with other Asian players was posted and stuff like that. That's going to be interesting to see as well because there's plenty of options there with the Mets, Yankees, all those. So many teams are interested in that. Like it's just so it's going to be interesting to see what that goes down to. But kind of moving on to the rest of the league. Actually, before we move on to the rest of the league, I did want to mention also the Cubs did have a promotion today, and it was Jared Banner to assistant general manager. And that's also awesome to see. Just because also, when we lost Craig Breslow to the Red Sox, that was unfortunate. But they moved Jared Banner up to assistant GM. He was the vice president of player development. Great to see that. And also, I will say this as well, seeing people of color in in a big spot in front offices for the Cubs as well, because it's rare to see in general in Major League Baseball, let alone for the Cubs, which I feel like I've never really seen anything close to a GM from somebody like that. So I love to see it. But moving on to the rest of the Major League Baseball, I did want to get your guys' thoughts on one of the main things that we will talk about today is the National League and American League MVP. And I mentioned Ronald Acuna Jr. won for the NL and Shohei Ohtani won in the AL. First, we'll get you guys' overall thoughts on those guys, and if those were the guys you picked or those were the guys you wanted to win. We'll start with you, Miles. What did you think about the AL and NL MVP this season, man?
So well deserved. Oh my god! And I had the pleasure of watching Acuna twice this year. One time in Atlanta, another time at Wrigley, and he plays with he's a player who just plays with so much, kind of like a carefree. He's just a kid out there just playing ball, and it's just really cool to see how he goes about his business. And he also has a very intense presence to him at the plate. Whenever you see him in the batter's box, you can kind of feel in the stadium. If you're the opposing team, it's kind of like a oh shit kind of moment.
Mm-hmm.
Is this guy going to catch a barrel? What's going to happen? And so it's just great. It's great for Acuna, and now he's in Venezuela, just continuing. He's not tired. He's not run out of any energy. He just went to another country and is doing the same thing. Went to his home country, which is awesome. And Ohtani, I don't even know where to start. Truthfully, he has one of my favorite swings in the MLB because everything about his swing is just very launch based, but he's also making a lot of contact. So which is really cool to see these guys get the spotlight, and I feel like we have very good representation for baseball. And so, going forward, look forward to seeing both of these guys have more success, and I'm hoping to see Ohtani in person at some point because I've actually never seen Shohei play in person. And he's one of the few players that I still want to see up close. So I couldn't be more happy. This is just great. These are two great seasons from two great players, and so I look forward to see how they follow up next year.
Yeah, and that reminds me actually, I've seen Ohtani play twice, at one at Wrigley and then one at Guaranteed Rate. Hasn't really done much in those two games. And what sucks is I almost went to a Wednesday game last year at Guaranteed Rate, and it was the game where Ohtani hit 2 and Mike Trout hit 2. So I was like, I will forever regret that, not going to that game. I will go to my grave regretting that I didn't go to that game, because legit two of the greatest players to ever play the game at this point, and just to see that, like, unfortunate. But anyways, Gabe, what were your thoughts on the MVP? Because I do have something to say after this as to my opinion. So I do want to hear your first thoughts on the MVPs of AL and NL.
Well, as far as the National League is concerned, I think they got it right. I don't think it was close. I know Matt Olson had a stellar season that was worthy of being a finalist for the award. I even though they can only name 3 finalists, I think he should have easily been up there. It was that good of a race. But Ronald Acuna Jr., man, became the most complete player in all of the game this season. He cut down his strikeout rate. He utilized his speed on the base path in a manner in which you knew he had the potential to do before, but he took it to a completely different level this year. To be the first player in the history of the game to hit 40-plus homers and swipe 70-plus bags, that takes a lot of effort. And the thing that I love the most and respected the most about what he did is that he played in 159 games. That man only missed 3 games, man. And he played every single day. And it was a pleasure and a treat to watch him live this year. I went up to Wrigley and watched him on a Sunday. And like Miles said, when he steps up to the plate, you know what time it is. And he's one of those guys that's like, hey, I can't go out to the restroom or whatever when he's up at the plate. Like, I got to see this. I got to see this at bat. I got to see how he's going to attack this pitcher and whether or not he's going to make him pay. And even when he's on the base paths, just watching him move and glide out there, he makes the game look easy, and he plays it with in a style of fashion where he lets you know he's the coolest dude in the building. And when he's walking out there, he's going to back it up with his stick at the plate. So, like, I love that. As far as Shohei Ohtani in the American League, it was well deserved. I thought the race was a little bit closer than what some people want to make it out to be. Like Julio Rodriguez, man, had a damn good season. And I hate that it's going to get unheralded look. And that's going to be one of these years we look back and say, damn, man, maybe he could have won MVP. But Shohei, he kind of put the stuff to bed by like July 1st. And it's unfortunate that he had to miss the final month of the season because I was looking forward to seeing him get to that 50 home run mark. I was really looking forward to seeing him do that, but I can't knock it. I can't. Like those two guys, they're the faces of the game, and rightfully so.
Yeah, and I think with you bring up a good point. I definitely thought about Julio Rodriguez and how good he did. I think the only thing that probably hindered his chances were just like his colder, I should say, not cold, colder first half than he did his second half because he went off in his second half.
Well,
First half,
he always do that.
Yeah, I know plenty
of players. You don't start hitting till after Mother's Day. I always tell my friend that like it's literally stats like around like May 15th, like on. He's one of the hottest hitters. He always gets off to like a slow first month.
Yeah. No, yeah, but again, definitely give it credit. I mean, he's a great player, and definitely, I mean, Ohtani is just one of those things where it's like for me, I feel like he's gonna win it every year if he has, solid, even if it's not elite pitching numbers, just having solid pitching numbers is already just enough to be like, well, he's done it all, so he's gonna win it. Like that's the way I see it. The NL side of things, though, I will say, well, I'll preface it by saying that with all due respect, Ronald Acuna Jr., I'm not mad that he won it or anything. Like he's a unanimous, so like I'm like whatever. But what I wanted to say though is that I really thought that Mookie Betts had a better shot, or I think at least should have had more first place votes because of his defensive versatility. Because we're splitting hairs now. So that's what I had a conversation with my friend. Is that when you compare both of these players, it's just you're not trying to disrespect either of them. It's just literally like you have to split hairs at this point because you have to be critical for either of those two. And I thought with me, if I had to pick my MVP, I was thinking Mookie Betts just because of the sense of the versatility he had and how good he played defense at those positions. Ronald Acuna, you could even argue took a step back defensively this year. It was not great, -9 outs above average. So that was disappointing on that end. From if you had to, again, pick, we're just picking apart at this point, but this is the way I saw it. And like, I do understand why he won. I think what helped him a lot is, of course, the stolen base thing. But I will say too, is that, and I want you guys' thoughts on this too, and you guys can bake me if I'm wrong, but like, if like in that sense too, as well, with him getting the record for stolen bases and all that, I think the clock plays its part. I think bases play a part too with the size of it. Now, obviously, he's still going to steal a crap ton of bases even without that. I know, but I'm just looking at reasons of why Betts could have won, why he could have had more of a shot at it. But correct me if I'm wrong, Gabe. I've been wanting to hear your opinion on this just because I know you really like. I mean, you like both players, but I know you really wanted Acuna and you were rooting for him. So like, just what are your thoughts on that and like if they played a part in your thinking?
Well, I mean, Mookie Betts, if you wanted to give him a first place vote and you broke it down in a way that I could understand, and I'm not gonna knock you, but what Ronald Acuna Jr. did, like to hit, like he didn't just hit 40 home runs. He stole 73 stolen bases. I had the numbers in front of me. And then, by the way, he batted over 300. And he struck out less than 100 times. I think he might be the first player that I can think of in recent memory that hit 40-plus homers, batted over 330, and struck out 100 times or less since Albert Pujols in the mid-2000s. That's like the last player that I could think of that might have done that. Miguel Cabrera in the American League. So like that, to me, that means a lot when you're able to impact the game in the many ways that he did. He did everything. He hit for average, he hit for power, and he made things happen with his speed on both ends. I mean, the outs above average number, it was -9, but like he still has some highlight plays. Mookie, I get your case for Mookie. And when you talk about most valuable player, not trying to take anything away from Ronald Acuna, but he played on the most potent offense you could say statistically when you look back at this year since the Murderers Row Yankees. And if you take Mookie Betts out that Dodgers lineup at any given point last season, you could say that they easily lose out on winning the NL West.
Yeah.
because of how valuable he was. I mean, like you said, the man played second. He played all around the outfield. Like his ability to be his ability for you to plug him and play him in multiple spots and then make a difference with his bat as well as his glove. I haven't seen a player do that in quite some time, but I just think Ronald had him beat. And when you doing it at the level he's doing it with the swag he's doing it with, and you got Time Magazine on you, that's a big deal. That's a big deal. And I'm eager to see what his younger brother's gonna look like after this season, because his younger brother has the ability to be a disruptor on the base paths. And I know this pitch clock plays a role in that, but didn't Ronald Acuna have a 30-30 season in 2019? So he been doing this before the pitch clock. He just took it to another level.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, he would have still stolen a crap ton even without the clock and all that. I just think that, like, it probably, I would say if I had to take a guess, maybe like 15 or 10, you could argue maybe, but again, that's just me pulling crap like out of nowhere. Like, I'm just kidding. But you're right. And I think it's just one of those things where, like, because I've had this conversation again with myself, just thinking about it and like kind of like countering it and it's like, yeah, it's just like also Ronald Acuna, it's just like his offense was just so overpowered. Like, it was just OP, right? To the sense of like, you can't really argue with his like you're willing to live with that defense if you're going to have that offense, right? It's like, it's kind of like with Castellanos. He's a great hitter. He's obviously he's had better years as compared to this year, but he's a good hitter, but great power hitter. And you're willing to live with the defense, if he's going to do that. So I understand from that point for sure. It's just one of those things where it's like, I think it would have been closer if you didn't get that record, but I think that's also just an easy thing to say. But I don't know, Miles, what's your take on this in general, and just the differences between a Betts and Acuna, and how you separate in general from your take?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely they both are such disruptors in and for their teams and in every game they play for, every game that they play, and it's hard to really distinct sometimes, and they both kind of have their own different lanes that they're kind of affecting the game with. When you can place Mookie at second, he's still probably going to go at least 2 for 4, or you have Acuna who may not be, even if he's not hitting a extra base hits. If he has 3 singles in a game, there's probably 3 stolen bases guaranteed. So you might as well count those as doubles. It's these are just 2 players where it's just like, I don't even know where I stand when it comes to that. But when I look at Acuna, with 40 home runs and 70 plus stolen bases, that's incredible. That's incredible for an era right now where we are now starting to see the batting averages go up a little bit. But I've been accustomed to seeing a very low batting average league wide for the past like 10 years. And so just to see how kind of the standard in terms of what we're looking for hitters in terms of average has gone down, and to see him perform the way he did this year, for me, it's just almost a unanimous choice. And that's not taking anything away from Mookie, who still hit 307 this year and almost had 40 home runs. He hit 39. And so it's just ways, I think it's just how you, I guess it depends on like the baseball fan and what you want exactly. What exactly intrigues you the most? I feel like there isn't too much of a wrong answer when it comes to this, because just like there's different types of baseball players, there's different types of fans that are enticed by what they see on the field. So I'm still leaning towards Acuna quite significantly, just because I love the presence that he brings, and I love kind of what he's done this year, what he did this year statistically. But that's not to take anything away from Mookie, and I think the rule changes have had a very positive effect for sure. Most of the time, and I think they do have the role when it comes to that. But when I look at the numbers for Acuna, it's outstanding. It's outstanding.
And I want to say this real quick. I just want to say this real quick. When the last time you seen 2 players batting out the leadoff spot put up the type of numbers that they have? Most leadoff hitters don't hit for power, on top of providing you with speed the way that Mookie Betts and Ronald Acuna do. In my opinion, what those 2 did was they made the leadoff spot the most valuable spot in baseball. And I wouldn't be surprised if you start seeing guys that are 5-tool players that have the ability to impact the game in more ways than just one start to leave their mark by being leadoff hitters and hitting for tremendous power. Like you're gonna start seeing a lot of these top tier guys. Like if I'm a Jordan Walker, that makes me look and say, if they could do that, I could probably do that too. You know, if I get my opportunity to rock out St. Louis and really do my thing, like I could do that too.
Yeah, 100%, man. And I think also like it kind of just reminds me of like like I mean, I'm sure there's been other seasons in the last 15 years that I'm gonna miss that are similar to it, but the one that obviously close to home is Alfonso Soriano in 06, the 40-40 season he had with the
Right.
Nationals.
Yeah.
And that's when like a leadoff hitter, you know, was he kind of was like kind of like brought it to the table, but nobody else was really doing it like multiple players are doing it now. I mean, and even like Schwarber, I mean, leading off for the Phillies too, is also like a guy that, while obviously doesn't put up the numbers that they do, he still with the home runs obviously can compete with them. So that is interesting too, and I do like that because look, at the end of the day, you want you know, those guys to get the most at bats. And when you have such a well-rounded lineup, like, you know, like the Phillies had, or just like the, you know, the Dodgers, the, you know, the Braves had, you know, it makes complete sense because guys can get on base at the bottom of the order. And also another thing too is that, I mean, just the fact that like, I mean, all you have to say too as well when the MVP race in the NL is as you mentioned, Gabe, that Matt Olson was left out of the top three just says it all of what type of year it was for the offense. I mean, the fact that a guy that hit 54 home runs and had an OPS plus of 162 was left out of the top three says it all. And how good that offense was. And kind of what you said about Mookie, take him out of the lineup. Same thing with Freeman, like that you take him out of the lineup as well. I think he's just as valuable, and I think that's why they were in the top three. Because I know some people were, I mean, Braves fans obviously were, understandably so, were ticked off that Olsen wasn't in the top three. But it's like, dude, you could have had like two or three, four like MVP candidates, you know, in there. So like, you know, it's understandable why, like, you know, they had to go with the Dodgers. It's just the way that the offenses were set up. Obviously, the Braves were better, but yeah, other than that, though, I mean, another big story that broke this week was Aaron Nola back to the Phillies. I know some people were like, that's boring because he's just going back. We wanted some excitement, you know, selfishly so. But I will say I expected no less, and I'm also just happy he didn't go to St. Louis. But I think he would have fit there perfectly, honestly. But he goes back to the Phillies for 7 years, 172 mil. And I kept hearing also just people saying like, wow, if he's getting 172 mil, then like, you know, what are these guys going to get? Blah, blah. Like just kind of like almost trashing the fact that he's getting 172 mil. And I'm like, do you guys not notice that this guy has a 372 career ERA, not to mention what he's done in the postseason, which is a 370 ERA. So, and that's in what is that, 9 games, 48 innings in the playoffs. So that, I don't think people like really talk about it. At least just the average fan don't realize how much a postseason, you know, resume does to a contract. I mean, like it helps a crap ton. I mean, it's like, dude, you can do it in the biggest stage. Like that says a lot. And a guy like Aaron Nola has obviously done that in the biggest stage. So, Gabe, what did you think about this deal? And what do you think about just the future of the Phillies with him there? Because I know there's some people that are saying, all right, well, they want to trade Castellanos. Where are they going to be in a few years then? If they're trading a guy like Castellanos, they're going to have like old players soon, blah, blah, blah. Like, I think, first of all, Aaron Nola's 30. I think he's going to be fine for, you know, 4 to 5 years, like even more. Who knows? Just with his stuff, he's obviously not like a guy throwing 100. When you don't throw 100 and you're not, you know, have that as your main thing, I feel like you can last longer. So I'm personally not too worried. I think even I'll take a 38-year-old Bryce Harper anyways, as well, for the record, over a lot of players. So I don't care about that either. But yeah, what were your overall thoughts on this deal and how it affects the Phillies and how it affects the market too? Because it also kind of changes things for a guy like Yamamoto, a guy like you know, Eduardo Rodriguez, Blake Snell, who is probably the biggest guy out there as of right now besides Yamamoto. So yeah, what do you think, Gabe?
I think it affects the market in a lot of ways because if I'm Blake Snell, I'm asking my agent, which I believe his agent is Scott Boras, right? I'm asking Scott, like, well, if he's worth 175 and I'm coming off my second Cy Young and I won a Cy Young in both the American League and National League over this decade, I'm asking my agents, hey, yo, Scott, how much am I worth? You know, I gotta be worth at least 200 mil plus because I have accolades that Nola doesn't. And that's not a knock on Aaron Nola. We know Aaron Nola is one of the best pitchers in baseball, and in the postseason, he proved that he was worth the bag and some, and Philadelphia paid up. But it seemed like, based off of what I read, that he could have got some better offers elsewhere. He just wanted to be in a situation where he's pitching in a winning environment for a winning ball club, in which the Phillies have provided him with. And yeah, this is a franchise that I do kind of worry about within the next 4 to 5 years when guys get a little bit older. But when you got a guy like Bryce Harper who is willing to do it all, not only as a player on the field, but back it up off the field by saying, you know what, I'm so adamant and willing to win here in Philadelphia that I'm going to move to first base. A lot of star players aren't willing to say that and do that. So kudos to him for being man enough to and strong enough to take that on as a responsibility, on top of being a leader and face of that ball club. But I like the move for Philly. I like the move for Aaron Nola. He wanted to solidify his roots in the area, and that's what he's able to do. And the Phillies are going to be in the thick of things in the National League East alongside of the Atlanta Braves and the New York Mets, who ain't going to be seeking to rest on their laurels. And they could also be another player in the Dylan C sweepstakes.
Yeah, and you mentioned it with the money. What I was going to say too is, I forgot to mention that he took less money, and multiple players have taken less money to be on the Phillies, which I think says a lot about the team, but I also think it says more so on just the fact that they're so committed to winning. Dave Dombrowski is committed to winning, which makes sense. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, we'll see what they do. They have plenty of options, and I think that Nick Castellanos thing might also just kind of be a feeler. I don't know if they're going to move on from him right now, but I think they're also just trying to make room, salary wise, which understandably so, because he's still owed a decent amount of money. So we'll see what happens there. But Miles, what's your take on the Aaron Nola deal? And like I said, man, as long as he's not on the Cardinals, I think I was pretty happy with that.
Yeah, please keep any good starting pitching away outside the Cubs, away from the NL Central. We don't need to do that. We're just now feeling good about ourselves again, of course. No, it's great. It's great, man, and I think it's very well earned from Nola as well. I think one of the things he said during the press conference that it's like Philly's the most comfortable place for him, and so I mean, you pitch in the playoffs the way that he does, and kind of leading this team, leading this rotation the past few years the way he has. I think is great, and even despite looking at his 4+ ERA this year, I think it's still very well earned. This is a guy, in my opinion, that has incredible stuff. Knows how to dot the zone, has breaking pitches that move from left to right or right to left, depending on what pitch he's throwing. It's great. And kind of what you said, Saul, is when I think about how this affects the market and what this means for Yamamoto and just Rodriguez as well. And so, now teams that's one less pitcher that teams have an option of potentially pursuing. And so now the less product that there is out there, the more some of these teams are willing to spend, because it's just one player down at a time, one pitcher down at a time, and some of these teams are in desperate need of a very solid starting pitcher. So it puts more pressure on ball clubs who are looking for that number one, that number two guy for the rotation. So I think it's great for Philly. I think it's going to be interesting for every other team going forward for the rest of this offseason. Because this may be kind of a far off take, but when you see a ball club like the Diamondbacks, who we didn't really expect to get to where they did this year, I think that almost motivates teams even more. Maybe some teams are thinking to themselves, we might be closer to this thing than we may realize. Maybe we're one good starting pitcher away, one solid position player away from potentially making some noise in October, shaking up some feathers in September, whatever the case may be. Kind of like the domino effects of that is what's really interesting to me. So I'm really curious to see which teams are going to land some of these big arms that are available. And I forgot to mention Snow.
Yeah, that's one of the main things that I thought about when Nola signed, because I'm like, shit, if he got 172, Snell's gonna get a
Bro.
bag. Like that dude's he's gonna get paid.
Exactly.
He gotta get like 205 at the max.
At the
And
max.
see,
Yeah, I agree.
and like Miles was alluding to, this pitching on this free agency market, and it's a real good time to be a pitcher right now in baseball if you're a free agent. But this pitching market is gonna be at a premium. And when one guy goes, if you miss out, man, good luck. Like you got the Cardinals out here getting ahead of the game, trying to get guys that was gonna be around if they didn't pick them up, and Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson, just to make sure that they got some arms, because these arms are gonna be flying off the radar rather fast within the next 2.5 weeks or so. And you can arguably make the case within the next 10 days, because once the winter meetings begin, that's when the deals go down. So yeah, like Yamamoto, Blake Snell, Eduardo Rodriguez, and those guys, yeah, they're gonna be seeking to get paid, and understandably so. And if you miss out, you're gonna have to cash in on the trade market, because if you don't, you're gonna be out here in trouble by the time you get to spring training in April.
Yeah, and I think also with the Cardinals thing, and I think I'd be saying this unbiasedly anyway, just because I think it's from a Cubs fan perspective, I'm like, really? Like that's what you're going for? But I think I would be saying it unbiasedly anyways. But I don't understand I get the need for starting rotation help, but then also like the way that they kind of, the front office said that they were going to be aggressive at starters. Like I thought they were going to be in on the Nola thing. Maybe they were, and they I just didn't really hear a lot of traction. Maybe they weren't. They just kept it private. But I thought they would be more into that market, man. And like them getting Kyle Gibson and Lance Lynn doesn't really do much, really. Doesn't really at all. Yeah. And like, but I mean, back for the record, still mid-November, they could still go out there and get Blake Snell. I understand that. But I'm just saying, like, from a Cardinals perspective, like, man, like a team that's kind of fallen off. Like, if I'm a Cardinals fan, I'm sure they're expecting way more than that. But I do want to get your thoughts on that as the last thing we'll talk about today. But Gabe, what are your thoughts on that and like the direction you think they're going in? Like, do you think that this is just their opening moves? Do you think they're still going to play a big part in maybe a Snell or whatever, any type of starter like that, even like a Eduardo Rodriguez type of thing? Or do you think this is the way they're going to go? They're going to go with depth. They're going to go with, because at the end of the day, I understand, like like I said, like even if your team, even if the Cubs got a guy like Kyle Gibson, I'm like, shit, well, I mean, we got enough. It's adding depth. That's fine. I understand that. So, but a guy like Lance Lynn, who's already, we've seen him struggle quite a bit, in this season. So, well, what are your thoughts on the way the Cardinals are opening up their offseason spending, and just the way that, just the way the pitching is? I mean, you talked about it already with the market and how it is, but what do you think about the Cardinals in general?
I'm kind of taken aback by what they've done thus far, because for a franchise that has two veteran stars, Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado, in an NL Central division that, let's be real, it's there for the taking. Milwaukee won it, but like anybody could win this division if they get out to a hot start and they take care of business and they make the right moves in the offseason. I don't understand it. Kyle Gibson, I won't knock that signing. He's a guy that is an innings eater, has been a solid contributor wherever he's pitched, dating back to his time with the Minnesota Twins and last year with the Baltimore Orioles. Good veteran to have, but like the top of your rotation still needs work. And you say you are willing to give up pieces in order to shore up your starting pitching. But then when I read publications out of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, you're saying that you're not willing to give up certain pieces. Like, one moment you want to give up Nolan Gorman, next minute you don't. You say Jordan Walker's off of limits, but if Jordan Walker was off limits, why did you send him down in the minors after he had his 14-game hitting streak to open up his career, and he had a couple bad weeks or two? Yeah, you sent him down to work on his mechanics and whatnot, and he came up and he finished the year incredibly well. But are you really sold on him being the guy? And I ask those questions for selfish reasons, I'll admit, because that's the team that the White Sox could be seeking to do business with. But I don't know what's going on in St. Louis. I don't. And they're operating like a franchise that I'm not accustomed to them operating as someone that's grown up admiring their front offices, dating back to the days in which you had the the likes of, Tony La Russa around there and all the other guys and they brain trust, man, that always knew how to develop players and work with players and their talent.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the things that that I was been surprised at how they've handled things because of growing up, the Cardinals were just the class of the NL, not only the NL but the NL Central in general.
Yep.
So seeing some of this stuff that had just been surprising to me, especially the Walker move. Like, we talked about that early in the season, just didn't understand that move. And
Made no sense.
It made no
sense at all.
And I wonder if they believe in him.
Yeah,
I just do, because it was a point in time where I didn't believe you could get Jordan Walker for Dylan Cease. Now they say Jordan Walker's off limits, but if you got these two veterans in Goldschmidt and Arenado, you owe it to them and you owe it to your fan base and your city to compete and try and put together a winner.
Mm-hmm.
They came there because you were the standard. Like Walt Jocketty, when he was there, he laid down a blueprint and those guys followed it. Now he's in Cincinnati as the CEO, the executive advisor to the CEO, and look at what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, yeah, I agree. That so it's something worth seeing, and again, still early in the offseason, so they could definitely change the tide if they're able to or get somebody or whatever. But Miles, what's your take on the Cardinals? Like I said, obviously from a selfish point, this is good for us, and they haven't been all over here spending big or whatever. But I will say, big pitchers are still coming to the NL Central with guys like Paul Skeens coming up, I'm sure, next year for the Pirates. So we're not safe fully, but hopefully nothing too imminent. But what's your take overall on just the Cardinals and the direction they're going in?
It's all in Paul Skeens' mustache, by the way. That's the key picture. It's the mustache. If you can rock the mustache, creepy, you are a dog. Yeah. Look, man, it's the Cardinals are an interesting ball club because just like the two of you, this is a team I've seen them really, really come to Wrigley Field and kind of ruin my childhood a few times. Just what they've done to the Cubs over the year and kind of just the respect that I've grown for this organization. I don't like and I don't really like that we have our first year without Yachty and now all of a sudden what do we do? It's Wilson's fault. He's not calling good pitches behind the plate. Let's send Jordan Walker down to what do you like? It's just I don't know. This is very this is a very interesting organization to me at the moment because they have some pretty good ball players, even on their major league roster right now. So I am just wondering what are they going to do, because I feel like they have not really been a talking point at all this offseason. We're hearing a lot of we have some free agents at the moment who are looking for homes. I haven't really heard anything about the Cardinals in terms of wanting to land one of these guys. And knowing the Cardinals organization, I'm surprised that if they're not making any attempt to bring certain players in. I'm very surprised by it. I'm not too familiar with their farm system. Maybe that plays a role in it. But I'm curious as to what exactly are they trying to get out of 2024 and beyond? Because like Gabe said, it's for the taking, bro. But you have to take it. The key word is take.
Yep.
You can't just have this kind of like a lackluster year and then go into next year expecting everything to be great. It's not going to happen. It doesn't work like that. So I'm very intrigued by this ball club, and I'm kind of curious to see, okay, well, what are they going to do come spring training of next year? What moves would they have made? Because I don't think you can have another 2-3 seasons like that and keep someone like Paul Goldschmidt or Nolan Arenado. At some point, you gotta start to kind of unwind things here.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, you do, and I could tell you what they prospects are like. Like most of their top 30 prospects, most of their top 30 prospects are pitchers. So I'm pretty sure that they're banking on, if they're not going to go out on this pitchers market, they got to be banking on Tink Hintz to be the guy next year coming up from Double-A. Like you got McGreevy, that's another arm. Cooper Jep, like they got Gordon Graceffo. Like they have a bunch of arms, but they don't really have position players. And if I'm a Cardinals fan, I'm kind of dejected right now because, like, I looked at the playoffs and all the guys that I once had in my farm system are on other teams. Randy Arozarena, Adolis Garcia, Zach Gallen, Sandy Alcantara. You know, even though he didn't pitch for the Marlins, like he was part of the roster. Like, that's just, they've let a lot of talent go over the years, man. And they got to figure out a way to get better and get better fast.
Yeah, and also I was gonna say, like, with the Cardinals is one of those things that, yeah, as a kid, Miles, as you said, like they just ruined so many games for us, so many seasons for us. And also Cardinals are just one of those teams where, just like the Lakers in the NBA, just like Manchester United in the English Premier League, I never thought I would see them in this kind of lull. And I've seen the Lakers at a low point. I've seen I've seen Manchester United at a low point. Now I've seen the Cardinals at a low point. That's crazy to me. So not
Yankees
used to
too.
it. Not used to it. Yankees too. Yankees too. They didn't make the World Series in the last decade, which is crazy to me still. But even then, I mean, at least they've competing consistently in the sense of postseason. I think they've only missed like one postseason or two or three, something like that in the last like 10 years. So yeah, I mean, I think they'll definitely get up there. But there definitely plenty of stuff that we missed, at least in this episode. That we have plenty of time in the offseason to mull over, because I mean, there's plenty of stuff, like, for example, all the managerial roles were filled up already. Ron Washington, Mike Schill, which plenty of opinions on that, to be honest with you, and just those guys joining. But we'll get to it. I mean, there's plenty of stuff that is going to break down, I'm sure, in the next week. And of course, as we get closer to the GM meetings, we'll break down as well. But for that is a good place, and that is a good place to wrap things up. I want to thank Miles Porter for joining me, Gabe Wilkins, of course. Like I said, you can check out his podcast, The State of Gabe, on Spotify. For Saul Rodriguez, War Media. Check out all the other stuff, Bears Den, Slam Society. Check out all that stuff, as well as our partners at Sports Zone Chicago, who help us with Bears Den as well, Sean Sierra and all them as well. So thank you for watching. Have a great Thanksgiving, and hope everyone has a great week. We'll see you next week. This was the At Bat Podcast.